the citizens who reside in St. George Northwest, in St. Mark, in the town of St. George, in St. Andrew Northeast, and St. Andrew Southeast, that you deserve better.
I cannot withdraw it, Mr. Speaker, and I will not withdraw it.
I ask you to withdraw the statement.
I will not withdraw it, Mr. Speaker. You hear me? I will not withdraw it.
The honorable member indicated that he didn't say.
I said I will not withdraw it, Mr. Speaker. I will not withdraw it.
Listen, honorable member.
Mr. Speaker.
You will need to withdraw it if you want to continue your address.
I will not withdraw it. Do what you want.
And there is a pattern emerging here that the citizens from those constituencies should pay attention to. As the Honorable Leader of Government Business said, last year, it was a complete no-show for the Finance Committee meeting to address last year's supplementary appropriation budget. On the seminal issue of gun violence, and ensuring that we send the message that the gun culture is not something we will accept in Grenada. When given the opportunity to support a bill for stiffer penalties and to make it more difficult for repeat gun offenders to obtain bail, what did they do? The Father of the House was absent. Two other members abstained, and two voted against it. One of them voted against it. A family member serves in the RGPF, the very institution that we rely on to protect and serve, and whose men and women put their lives at risk every day to serve this nation. On that score, Mr. Speaker, I have not left Grenada since Hurricane Beryl. I know they say I run the cabinet from a plane. I have not left Grenada save to visit Carriacou Petit Martinique and our brothers and sisters in Union and Canouan and Mayo, and to show solidarity with Comrade Ralph Gonzalez and the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But I will be traveling tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, to Guyana for one day, partly to express personal appreciation and gratitude to the President, the government, and the people of Guyana for the tremendous support that they've given to us. And also, Mr. Speaker, we are leading a trade and investment mission, and we are hoping to establish direct flights between Guyana and Grenada so that we can help boost both the manufacturing and our tourism industry here. I too will join the chorus in wrongly condemning the display by the Father of the House and his children in walking out on today's proceedings, especially in light of the fact that this is the first time that the House is sitting since the passage of Hurricane Beryl. The passage of Hurricane Beryl represents and is the single biggest challenge that the nation of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique has faced in the last 2 decades. And one would have thought, given that they fought hard, campaigned relentlessly to get this job, which is the job to come to this House, to represent the people who've put their confidence in you, that the least you would do is to pay them the respect by remaining in the House and contributing towards the debate on what is perhaps the most seminal act that we can do as parliamentarians in passing a supplementary budget, or opposing it, if you are so inclined, given the fact that on July 1st, we faced and stared down the barrel of our biggest existential threat over the last 2 decades. And so I want to say to the citizens of Grenada, and in particular, to the citizens who reside in St. George Northwest, in St. Mark, in the town of St. George, in St. Andrew Northeast, and St. Andrew Southeast, that you deserve better. And there is a pattern emerging here that the citizens from those constituencies should pay attention to. As the Honorable Leader of Government Business said, last year, it was a complete no-show for the Finance Committee meeting to address last year's supplementary appropriation budget. On the seminal issue of gun violence, and ensuring that we send the message that the gun culture is not something we will accept in Grenada. When given the opportunity to support a bill for stiffer penalties and to make it more difficult for repeat gun offenders to obtain bail, what did they do? The father of the house was absent. Two other members abstained, and two voted against it. One of them who voted against it, a family member, serves in the RGPF, the very institution that we rely on to protect and serve, and whose men and women put their lives at risk every day to serve this nation. And when we are passing legislation to strengthen the penalties and to make it more difficult for criminals, they vote against it, they run away, or they abstain. So I want the citizens in those constituencies to pay attention to the kind of representation that you are not getting in the House of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, the last 8 months has brought significant challenge at a time when Grenada is celebrating its 50th anniversary as an independence nation. We face the scourge of an unprecedented upswing in gun violence. We had an unprecedented 15-year drought. That drought led to significant bushfires. And before the drought was finished, we faced the onslaught of Hurricane Beryl. Notwithstanding all of this, Mr. Speaker, the citizens of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique have shown their resilience, have shown their willingness to fight for Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. And so the brilliance of our 50th anniversary independence celebration is for us to reminisce and reflect on what we can achieve as a nation when we come together, when we work together, and when we fight for Grenada and Grenadians. And so, Mr. Speaker, I want to take the opportunity to thank our Olympians for reminding us of the brilliance, of the talent, of the humility, of the statesmanship that we all have in us when we work hard and when we put Grenada first. So in the midst of the challenges of Hurricane Beryl, they brought a smile on the face of every Grenadian. Notwithstanding the difficult times that we were going through, and in particular, the difficult times that our brothers and sisters in St. Patrick, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique were going through. So I have to use this opportunity to again publicly thank King James and the crew. And I want to particularly mention those younger ones amongst them who may not have medaled, because I want to encourage them to use the example of Kirani, Anderson, Lyndon, to understand what you can achieve with hard work, perseverance, and dedication. And I want to thank the minister, the then acting Minister of Youth and Sports, and the team for the tremendous job they did in welcoming our Olympians and in ensuring that they were justly rewarded, and in ensuring that we don't just talk the sports policy, but we put it in action so that it could continue inspiring the next generation of Grenadians. Not just Grenadians, but I think our brothers and sisters throughout the OECS and CARICOM members, so that their young people can also aspire to be great Olympians. So, Mr. Speaker, we are here to make our contributions towards the supplementary appropriation bill. And I actually did the perhaps pedantic thing of looking up the meaning of supplement, since it's always useful, Mr. Speaker, to appreciate that words have meaning. And to supplement, one of the dictionaries says, to supplement a thing is to add to something in order to complete or enhance it. And this is what we are seeking to do, Mr. Speaker. We have a budget that was passed. 8 months more or less have elapsed. And even if we didn't have Hurricane Beryl, we would have been back in this house to seek a supplementary budget. Hurricane Beryl has, of course, exacerbated the need for us to do so with some urgency and with significant more resources being required. And so, Mr. Speaker, as the Minister for Infrastructure, I want to highlight that in the allocations, the Ministry of Infrastructure, Physical Development, Public Utilities, Civil Aviation and Transportation has the single largest chunk of the allocations, that of $87 million, out of the $268 million plus that has been allocated. And before I deal with why the Ministry of Infrastructure requires this supplement of $87 million, I just want to reiterate what the Minister of Finance said and what the Honorable MP for St. John said. This supplementary appropriation, Mr. Speaker, is financed in large measure, almost exclusively, by the hard-working citizens of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique who pay their taxes. So I'm making the point that notwithstanding Hurricane Beryl, and contrary to the view sometimes that is put out there, this country has not benefited. Subject to what I will say next, this country has not benefited in any significant measure from financing from the international community, from the international donor community. We have not benefited. Subject to the list of persons I will highlight next. So I'm making the point, Mr. Speaker, that when it comes to climate justice, when it comes to climate financing, when small island developing nations say that we are on our own, and that despite all the talk that there is no climate justice, this example demonstrates that clearly, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I will read out, it is long, but I feel I need to do it, partly because I want to thank publicly and go on record the individuals, the institutions, and the persons. Some of them wish to remain anonymous, but I will try as best to respect their wishes. But I think it's important for us to go on record to thank those persons who have financially contributed to the Hurricane Beryl relief effort. It is by no means exhaustive, Mr. Speaker, because what we sought to do is to list persons or institutions or bilateral partners who have contributed 25,000 EC dollars or more. And this list is as at today's date. The Embassy of the People of the Republic of China, $268,701.45. The government of Angola, $250,000. The government of Belize, $268,757.90. The government of the Cayman Islands, $537,400. $577.90. And I want to go on record of singling out the Premier of the Cayman Islands, who visited in person with a large delegation to bring this financial support, as well as to bring other relief to us. A sum of $80,476.30 via the Consulate General of Grenada in Dubai. The government and people of the Commonwealth of Dominica, $1 million. By far, the single largest contribution. And I want to emphasize that it is those who have little that are getting the most. So I want to thank Prime Minister Spirit and the government and people of Dominica. The government of the Bahamas, $403,167.90. Again, funds channeled through the Consulate General of Grenada in Dubai, $39,712.21. The government and people of Suriname, $268,757.90. The government of South Korea, through the Korea International Cooperation Agency, $268,757.90. King Abdullah Al Saud from Abu Dhabi, $806,397.90. I hope I can pronounce it properly. The Agbu Kifas Initiative from Abuja, Nigeria, $53,701.90. And again, the same Agbu Kifas Initiative from Abuja, an additional $26,787.64. The Kingdom of Morocco, through the International Cooperation Moroccan Agency, $268,757.90. The government of St. Lucia, $679,225. And so again, Mr. Speaker, you're seeing it is our neighbors, when we stretch our arms, St. Lucia, Dominica, who are actually making the single largest donations. The General Secretariat of the Organization of the American States, $67,142.90. The Foreign Mission Board out of Philadelphia in the United States of America, $67,075.70. A coffee cab from Mexico, $268,731.02. Individuals, for example, Mr. Monze Akbik from the UAE in Abu Dhabi, $33,459.75. Mrs. Suvarana Jadhav, again from the United Arab Emirates in Dubai, $33,540.40. Mr. Alexander Sologob from Cyprus, $33,540.40. Mr. Hamza B. Al-Kholi from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, $53,701.90. Ms. Sevkep Ayaskif, $300,000. Apex Capital Partners, $80,530.14. Mr. D. Rap Hian, $53,400. Korea Software Solutions, $268,820. Antillian General Insurance Company Limited, a local donor, $25,000. Even Garfield made a contribution of $25,000. Mr. Michael Melchinek, $26,820.17. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank also made a contribution of $1 million as a grant transfer. I should also point out, and that was clear, that Mr. Adam Dickon handed over a check for $200,000 funds he raised through a GoFundMe. So I've singled this out, Mr. Speaker, because there is no big bilateral or even multilateral check that has come our way in the form of donations or grants from anybody. These are all small contributions made by individuals or businesses, or in some cases, governments that have made bilateral contributions to us. And so, Mr. Speaker, I just want to highlight, because much has been spoken about the Catastrophic Risk Insurance Facility, or CRIF. But Mr. Speaker, taken at its highest, if we round up the sum paid to the central government by CRIF, that's $119 million. What is the supplementary budget that we've come to this House with? It is $269 million. We still have to find $150 million to finance our budget. So the notion that somehow the island or the country is throwing money because we've gotten money, Mr. Speaker, is regrettable, and it's also dangerous. Because what we have not spoken about is the actual damage and the cost of the damage and the cost of actually rebuilding our country. So, Mr. Speaker, some of the rapid assessments indicate that's just actual damage that this country has suffered, loss and damage in excess of $600 million. And we're not really counting actual economic loss. We are just talking about actual physical destruction. Some of which is probably not even quantifiable. Because how are you going to quantify the loss and destruction of the mangrove in Carriacou and Petit-Martinique? How are you going to quantify the loss and destruction of the forests in Carriacou and Petit-Martinique? And I know perhaps, Mr. Speaker, we've forgotten. I don't think people appreciate that there is absolutely no vegetation. After Hurricane Beryl, there was no vegetation in Carriacou and Petit-Martinique. How are you quantifying that? How are you planting back the mangrove? What is the medium to long-term impact on the fish stock, on our ecosystem? So this is not just about physical infrastructure, build physical infrastructure that human beings build. It is actually about the place we live, the ecosystem, the environment. So when the Minister of Finance says this is a drop in the ocean, it is a drop in the ocean. And we have to appreciate that. And when you start disaggregating the sums, Mr. Speaker, you will quickly appreciate that it's a drop in the ocean. So of the $118 million that we've gotten under the CRIF payout, it's divided into 4 categories. Category 1, excess rainfall, $1.4 million. Category 2, coastal damage, $2.8 million. You think $2.8 million could restore the coastline in Carriacou and Petit-Martinique? At 2.8, you might be able to build a jetty or a raft that disappeared in Petit-Martinique. The tropical cyclone, $53 million. 2 tropical cyclones, $53 million and $60 million each, and you get $118 million. So, Mr. Speaker, I am not one to try and ever steal anybody's thunder. When the CRIF was initiated, we obviously was not in office. And so I will go on record, I will differ a little with my friend from St. John. Notwithstanding that it took a little while to become part of the facility, I will go on record and thank the former administration that was in office at the time for ensuring that Grenada became part of the CRIF facility. And for that, they absolutely should be commended, and I'm going on record for doing so. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to say this, and I hope the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, and let me use the opportunity now so I don't forget, because I wanted to start my presentation by thanking the Minister of Finance, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, the Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, all of the budget officers, the team at Customs and Inland Revenue, because ultimately, they are the ones, Mr. Speaker, who have to carry the bulk of the workload in getting us to this point, in ensuring that the appropriations are before this House for debate. And sometimes I think the population does not appreciate. Public servants get criticized a lot, sometimes deservedly so. But I have to say that the Minister and his team at the Ministry of Finance are some of the most professional and hardest working public servants that we have. And so I want to go on record of thanking them for this. But I want to make the point, I was Minister of Finance for a brief period, Mr. Speaker. And the Permanent Secretary in one of our discussions raised the fact that I think Rail had been paying these premiums for perhaps over a decade. And we had not received a single cent from CRIF. Premiums by the millions. And we had not received a single cent. And in fact, I think we were having these discussions after there was extensive flooding and loss and destruction, and we could not benefit. And he asked Prime Minister, are you sure this is something you want to continue? And that was compounded by the fact that I think we had increased the premium by about $200,000. So you're facing increased premium and no payouts for a number of years, and you're asking yourself, why am I paying this? And I said to the PS, we are paying it, sit down with the team and work through to ensure that we understand what it is we are buying and why we are buying it. And I think the Permanent Secretary was on record thanking the CRIF team after the payout for ensuring that the work that had to be done was done with his team at the Ministry of Finance so that they understood why we were buying the CRIF, what is the parametric nature of the insurance that we need to have to ensure that finally, when the Category 4 hurricane barreled on us in Greater Carriacou and Petit Martinique, that we are able to benefit with this payout. So let us be clear. This is not donor money. This is parametric insurance that the state of Grenada has paid for. And we are finally benefiting from the payout. We obviously wish we didn't have a hurricane. But this is called financial resilience. And this is one of the lessons that we've learned from Hurricane Ivan. You have to build fiscal and financial resilience into everything you do because you face these existential threats every year. And so I also want to go on record, Mr. Speaker, and point out, and this time I'm taking credit, we are taking credit. Grenlec did not have any CRIF insurance prior to us coming into office. And it was through my discussions with the board at Grenlec that the financial officer and the board sanctioned Grenlec buying catastrophic risk insurance. And as a result, Mr. Speaker, Grenlec obtained the payout of $9,313,275 US, an equivalent of 25.1 million. Now, prior to that, Mr. Speaker, Grenlec was self-insured because no insurance company would insure a transmission and distribution grid. They would have to put money aside themselves and meet this out of cash. And we are talking here the entire transmission and distribution grid in Carriacou and Petit Martinique destroyed. And significant destruction of the transmission and distribution grid in St. Patrick. But, Mr. Speaker, I am happy to report that in Grenada, all customers, barring those whose homes obviously were completely destroyed, have had electricity restored to them as we speak today. In the case of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, obviously because of the level of destruction, we are looking at only about 13% of the demand being restored. Now, Wassa, Mr. Speaker, had no catastrophic parametric insurance. This was only bought. In fact, the premiums were only paid after Hurricane Beryl hit Grenada. And they got a payout of $2.2 million US dollars, or $5.9 million. So, Mr. Speaker, we recognize we are dealing with the state, we are dealing with the major utilities. But we are also going to look at how we can get the necessary catastrophic risk insurance for other sectors that are vital to the economy. And recall the Minister for Economic Development, Agriculture pointed out that he came to me earlier this year and said, Prime Minister, we need to get some insurance for the cocoa and nutmeg farmers. It was after 5 or 6 in the evening, and he said the deadline was tomorrow. And I said to him, without even consulting with the colleagues, because I knew they would support it, get the insurance. And it is because of this, Mr. Speaker, again, the GCNA and the GCA have some funds available to assist with the challenges that our farmers in that sector face. So, Mr. Speaker, the fishing industry, the agriculture industry, the tourism industry, we have to strengthen those areas by ensuring that we can assist them with getting the kind of insurance coverage they need so we can build financial resilience. Because if not, Mr. Speaker, they will be coming back to the taxpayers for assistance when we face these catastrophic types of incidents. Mr. Speaker, if I may be permitted now to turn a little to the Ministry of Infrastructure, because it has the largest sector of the capital budget. And Mr. Speaker, we can talk about, for example, asphalt works. What was allocated, Mr. Speaker, in the budget was $14 million. That's what was allocated. Last year, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Infrastructure spent a little under $22 million for asphalt and asphalt-related works. So we knew, Mr. Speaker, that unless there is a dramatic reduction or a significant decrease in prices, and we know that will not happen with the existing geopolitical tensions and the wars and the challenges with freight and so on, that we would have to come back to this House for approval for an additional sum, given that only $14 million was allocated. But, Mr. Speaker, we have undertaken a significant works that was not budgeted for. And when I stood in this Parliament and said that we are going to resurface the True Blue Road, which had not been resurfaced, or at least no major works have been done on it since, I'm told, since Sir Eric Matthew Gehrig had built the roads. We knew, Mr. Speaker, that the time had come for us to take decisive action. And, Mr. Speaker, as is clear, the work has commenced, the work is ongoing, and we intend to resurface the entire True Blue Road. And in areas where there are no sidewalks, we will build the sidewalks. And it's not just for the people of True Blue. St. George's University is the single biggest employer in Grenada and contributes as a private entity, is the single largest contributor to our GDP. It is shameful, Mr. Speaker, that the students and the Grenadian workers who work at that institution have had to travel on this kind of pothole roads for the last 20 or 30 years in the state it has been in. And so sometimes we have to lift our standards a little bit, Mr. Speaker. The people of Grenada deserve better. And so we are unreservedly unapologetic for taking on things that have not been done in 30 and 40 years. The same way we took on the pensions is the same way we will take on the difficult challenge of dealing with infrastructure. And I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, I'm sure those who ply the St. Andrews to St. George's route are beginning to see that if it has taken 100 years to start the widening of the route over Granitang, I'm sure they are beginning to see that we are taking on that difficult task. It is just the start, Mr. Speaker. We have to address all of the bridges. We have a lot of blind corners. The roads were obviously built along the horse and donkey times, and we've continued like that. But we have to aim to improve the line of sight, to widen the roads, and to make it better for and safer for our pedestrians. And so, Mr. Speaker, again, those areas we need funding to be able to do it. Mr. Speaker, work has commenced on the Cliff to Woburn Road. As I've said before in this House, when we got into office, the design for the Cliff to Woburn Road did not include sidewalks, and it did not include widening the road. I don't know how, with the kind of development taking place up the eastern coast, we would want to build a road that takes larger arteries, the Calvini main road, the Woburn main road, the Monjeli main road, the Springs main road, the Woodlands main road, and then squeeze it into a narrow 3/4 mile of a road where two vehicles can pass next to each other without almost coming to a complete stop.
No vision.
So, Mr. Speaker, we had to go back to the consultant and say to them, this is not acceptable. Their response is that their brief was just to resurface the road. So that's not acceptable. We cannot be spending millions of dollars just to resurface the road in residential areas on the main road. So it is difficult, Mr. Speaker, because the homes are built right up to the road, both on the bottom side and on the top side. So there's some land acquisition that is required in order for us to be able to widen the road to make it possible for two vehicles to pass comfortably. And so it is a challenging site, but the construction work has commenced, and hence the reason, Mr. Speaker, why an additional allocation is required for the Cliff to Woburn Road. Mr. Speaker, the modernization road. As I indicated before, Mr. Speaker, when the road failed, it was the bottom part of the road that failed. A design was initially done by the consultant Beston, which sought not to interfere with the top side of the road. However, after construction commenced, a number of things happened. There was a burst Noasa main that led to significant water entering the site, and a decision was taken to interfere with the top side of the site. And that's the hill above the road. That decision, wisely or not, did occur, and as became self-evident, it created major instability on the top side of the road. The site essentially is a gravel site. And if you know gravel, once the gravel starts to form, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't stop. And so a lot of money was spent excavating and attempting to bench and stabilize that site. And it still poses some challenges because there's a water course there, and there are houses right at the top of the hill. So, Mr. Speaker, the entire site had to be redesigned. And the design now had to take into account the bottom slope, where the road originally failed, and where, unfortunately, a lot of the material from the top was dumped, the road itself, which now required a bridge, and stabilizing and protecting the road from any further slippages at the top side. So it required a completely new design. That in and of itself, Mr. Speaker, would have meant a lot more money just on the design phase. And the construction costs, obviously, Mr. Speaker, essentially doubled. So what was originally a $9 million project has now become a $21 million project. I'm happy to report, however, Mr. Speaker, that significant progress has been made. The concrete slab for the bridge itself is now completely built, and if we needed to, emergency vehicles can, in fact, drive over the bridge. There are some, obviously, ongoing works. Walls, retaining walls are still being built. A sidewalk is being built because because it is a bridge, you have the road, and there's a sidewalk that would give pedestrians the opportunity to have a fantastic view of the southern coast of Grenada. And there's also a retaining wall that is going to be built so that if you have any further slippage of the gravel, the retaining wall will protect the road, and the gravel will slip beneath the bridge. The bridge is built using arches, so there's space for debris to slip underneath, and there's also the opportunity for utilities, water, electricity, etc., to pass underneath the bridge, and for any service vehicles, such as a tractor or so, if necessary, to go beneath it. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, we are going to have to do, I'm not an engineer, but I believe the word is geotech-type solutions to stabilize both the upslope and the bottom slope. All things being equal, Mr. Speaker, we expect this road to be completed no later than by the end of November. So I want to thank the team at the Ministry of Infrastructure. It has not been easy. I want to thank the contractors and the consultants for taking on this major road. I will stay on the West Coast a little, Mr. Speaker, because we have a lot of 30 and 40-year issues that have just sat there. There's an area known as Mabuya on the way to Gulf. We cannot continue having the people on the west coast of Grenada always having to take some long, dangerous, narrow, winding road to get to and from their homes or to and from their places of work. So as it stands now, you either have to detour through Monkuma, or when you get closer to Gulf, you have to go back up through Douglaston, etc. So every time you think you're making a little progress, we have another detour. So we are committed to taking on the next difficult spot, which is the Mabuya area, which, if my memory serves me well, I almost feel since I was a little boy, this road is like that, and they have not fixed it. So we need to fix it, Mr. Speaker. We need to be able to have a main artery of the West Coast that takes us at least up to Gulf, without having to constantly go through some narrow roads that were not meant for major traffic. So that is something, Mr. Speaker, that we have some designs for. We are looking to get the bills of quantities done for the costing, and then we will be inviting tenders so that we can get to work as quickly as possible. And we hope that, obviously, by then, the monumental landslip will be completely fixed, and we will be in a position to have a person traverse up to that site without having to go through the detour. And let's think about this for our drivers or everyone, from people who are going to work, from the people who are driving. All of these detours are longer. The roads are more dangerous. They're very narrow. So the cost, the wear and tear, people who are building homes and so on up that side, you have to get trucks that either come from Grenville and come all the way around. So it's been a very expensive and inconvenient time for them. So this is another area that we intend to tackle, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, pedestrians, particularly in the south of the island, are facing enhanced risk as a result of the dramatic increase in motor vehicles on our roads. And it is also creating significant traffic. So, Mr. Speaker, we have to erect pedestrian bridges that can allow pedestrians to cross over the traffic, partly to deal with the traffic itself and to also make crossing the roads safer. So, Mr. Speaker, we are looking at 3 pedestrian bridges, one to be erected in the area known as Best for Less, along that area where the main bus stop is there, in Grandlands. We are going to have to look at putting one closer in the Calise area, where the road tends to divert in either directions, and you have school children and so on who need to cross. It's a busy area, and it's a wide area. And then we're going to have to erect one along the Morris Bishop Highway, because again, we've got a school, the Grandlands School in that area as well. And I know the folks at LL Ramdani and Company oftentimes do Samaritan's work by crossing the kids in the morning, which is a dangerous stretch of road with traffic going. So we also need funding to do this. If the member of the town of St. George was interested in what is going on in his constituency, he would have remained. But we also need to address the issue of the bridges in River Road. And Mr. Speaker, we have delayed this because, as I've said previously, when we got into office, the quotations we got for building these 2 bridges were $38 million. We found that difficult to digest, that to build 2 bridges over the St. John's River, that we need to spend that amount of money. So we've gone back to the drawing board. We've gotten designs for steel bridges. We have gotten the costings for the steel bridges, which are significantly cheaper. The key thing now would be to design the abutments, because these bridges will be manufactured to direct and exact specifications so that they can fit into the abutments. So we are having the abutments designed in-house using the Cuban engineers who are the Ministry of Infrastructure. Once those designs are completed and the design review process is completed and approved, we will then obviously again get bills of quantities, go to market for tendering, select a contractor to work with the engineers who will design and manufacture the bridges and have them shipped to Grenada so that we can complete this process and proceed with repaving the entire River Road area and the St. John's River. So I've just highlighted these road-related projects. There is a bridge known as the Marquis Bridge in St. Andrew. And if you drive by, Mr. Speaker, you can see it's just a matter of time. So we have, it's the bridge before what is called Bumpy Corner, right? So we are designing a new bridge, again, because we do not want to wait, Mr. Speaker, until the bridge collapses and you can't pass to then say we have a problem. And so the Ministry of Infrastructure is actively embarking upon being a lot more proactive in terms of identifying the areas that are vulnerable, identifying the failing infrastructure, and then responding to it. So I just want to give this example, and there are other examples. The GRIP project intends to also deal with some of the other bridges in St. Andrew that also needs to be addressed in general. The Paradise Bridge, Mr. Speaker. We can't continue with the Paradise Bridge. Up to Saturday night, some people are tracking my movements. We're driving to the Paradise Bridge, and lights are on green and the traffic is backed up. And two people, apparently both of them seeing green, drove into each other on the bridge. So we can't have a one-way carriage, Mr. Speaker. In fact, there's some heavy construction equipment that came into Grenada with the view to, it's an asphalt plant, because that's one of the challenges we have with our road maintenance, Mr. Speaker, the absence of adequate asphalt plants on island to deal with the quantities that we need. And the equipment is too large for the bridge. So the equipment has been sitting in St. George's for a month now, and we need to be able to barge the equipment up to Telescope in order for us to operate. And that is what we mean, Mr. Speaker, when we say our infrastructure in Grenada needs a major overhaul. Because you're actually at the point where construction equipment can't pass on some of our bridges. And the same will apply for a lot of the bridges on the West Coast. In fact, in order for the Honourable Minister James to be able to do the drilling for a geothermal project, the roads to the sites also need to be addressed, because again, the drilling equipment will not be able to get up to the sites. So Mr. Speaker, we are some distance back when it comes to the type of infrastructure that we need in order to support a modern society. So again, this is something we would need to address. In the interest of time, Mr. Speaker, I want to speak briefly about the impact of Hurricane Beryl on the education infrastructure in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. And Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Education is obviously not in this House, so I expect he will deal with it more thoroughly when the Senate meets to consider the supplementary appropriation. But I want to point out Leicester, Harveyville, Hillsborough Primary, St. Thomas Aquinas, Mount Pleasant Primary School, all impacted. And we are all in the process of getting them repaired so that school can commence in those facilities in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. So this, let's be clear, September 1 will make it 2 months since the passage of Hurricane Beryl. So this idea that somehow miraculously we will go back to the 30th of June is a fallacy. The schools are the shelters. So it will be a significant challenge to in fact start the schools, even when you repair them, because you have a major housing challenge on our hands. And even if you wanted to bring up contractors to Carriacou to help, there are no place for them to stay. Right? So that is the degree of difficulty that the Honourable MP and the leader of government business is talking about, the logistical challenges that we face. MacDonald College in St. Patrick, a contractor should be on site working to repair some of the damages so that school can recommence there as well. So, Mr. Speaker, again, this is why we need to supplement, because none of this would have been budgeted for because there was no Hurricane Beryl. And so you would find there would be extensive capital costs associated with this. Mr. Speaker, the police stations. We are well on our way to completing work on what was the floor building on the carnage to house the police headquarters. I know the Minister at the MIT have been pushing and pushing to get us to complete, but you'd appreciate the police headquarters is a specialized building, and so we have to work to try and make sure that we get it right. Again, Mr. Speaker, since I've known myself, the police headquarters has been up on the fort. Highly inaccessible. Frankly, if you wanted to deal with the police high command, you just had to block the road. The road is so narrow, one vehicle across it will do the trick. Highly inaccessible. highly inappropriate, frankly, for police headquarters. But it's been there all my life, I think, and probably all the life of most Grenadians. Who's been brave enough to say we will stop patching and we will get a brand new facility and renovate it and buy it, so we're not renting, for the police high command? This administration, how long have I served as Minister for National Security? How long has the father of the house served uninterrupted as Minister of National Security? You'd like to have the police running around him. Before you see him, you see the police. But ask him to service the infrastructure that the police need to use. He spoke at the Finance Committee about the Grenville Police Station. You think the state of the Grenville Police Station happened miraculously over the last 2 years? Mr. Speaker, we are the ones who are going to rent. The Attorney General's office is finalizing the lease. Premises in Grenville to move the police station so that the police officers can work in a more comfortable environment. Again, these are issues that we need a supplementary budget to deal with. I will take his advice. It has taken a long time for him to get there, that the site of the Grenville police station is perhaps not appropriate, and that we should not waste more money in attempting to refurbish this building, and that what we should be looking at is a brand new facility for the men and women of the IGPF in St. Andrew. And if we have to do so, Mr. Speaker, we will willingly do so because we appreciate the sacrifices being made by the men and women. The St. David's police station. Mr. Speaker, you know, the former administration renovated a building in St. David's in the very compound that the IGPF is in. It took me to walk in there and realize that the building is absolutely empty. Brand new building, empty, and the men and women are in a dilapidated police station in St. David's. You could break into the police station. There are no windows. The female members of the IGPF have to climb up an attic that you literally have to crawl to get in and out of. Some of them have fallen down the steps and were hospitalized. I'm not making this stuff up. If you go and you see the facilities that passes for a kitchen or for a common area, it's disgusting. And you have a brand new building sitting right there in the compound, renovated and closed up. I've instructed the police to move into the building so that we can renovate the St. David's police station. And again, we have to make the decision as to whether or not this is an appropriate place. Very limited parking, very little space. It's an old plantation house, right? And we perhaps need to understand the history of plantation estates and police, because most of the police stations are old plantation houses because they come from the overseers from the days of the estates. So I'm saying all of this, Mr. Speaker, to say that all of these things, the Victoria police station needs to be addressed. I can go on and on. Right. Most of the facilities are not appropriate and they need modernizing. I will briefly turn to the prisons as well. The prisons infrastructure, hundreds of years old, completely no longer appropriate, and a significant potential security risk for this nation. Because if the infrastructure collapses or fails, we know what will happen. So again, Mr. Speaker, we have to look at a new prison and at a different location. I think we all jokingly say that the prisoners have the best view in Grenada. So all these things, Mr. Speaker, the necessary design work, the necessary consultancy that is required to address those issues are required. So again, Mr. Speaker, that is part and parcel of why we need to ensure that we have the appropriate supplementary budget to address these issues. And I'm speaking specifically about law enforcement and security, Mr. Speaker, because people talk. But I want the public to appreciate the institution, the RGPF, that we inherited, crumbling, broken, and in many instances, no infrastructure. So you see, Mr. Speaker, there is an allocation here for an automated fingerprinting system. If you don't have that, and people break into people's homes, and you can't do fingerprinting, then you have, your hands are tied, literally, in terms of your ability to conduct the criminal investigations that are required. This, Mr. Speaker, the computing power on this, I think, exceeds the computing power on the first rocket that went to space. And the same way good things happen on this is the same way bad things are happening on this. And the evidence is stored on it. So if the police doesn't have the ability, when conducting criminal investigations, where they recover cell phones that are being used part and parcel of crime, and the phones are locked, and they cannot open or intercept the phones, Mr. Speaker, again, their hands are tied. We are buying the necessary equipment to allow them to do this, because currently, Mr. Speaker, they have to go to Barbados to get help for this. Mr. Speaker, drones. I don't think we appreciate how technology, and particularly drone technology, is revolutionizing the world. And if we don't quite appreciate it, it was on full display at our 50th anniversary of independence. What wooed people and what amazed people was a drone show. But drones also have other applications, Mr. Speaker. As you can see in the Russia-Ukraine war, it is the use of drones to deliver death and destruction. Or some people may say to deliver defense, peace, and security. And so, Mr. Speaker, we too, within the national security apparatus, have to create the policies, the rules, and regulations to regulate the use of drones. And the police itself needs to be equipped with drones that can allow them to fight, detect, and prevent crime. So, Mr. Speaker, again, we need to ensure that we can buy the necessary drones to strengthen law enforcement's ability to treat with this issue. And so that we get the picture, and don't think this is a joke, Mr. Speaker. With drones, you can drop drugs, you can drop guns over the prisons. You can intercept a flight, you can drop a bomb over the residence of the Governor General, or the Prime Minister, or the ministerial complex, etc. So we have to create the no-fly zones, we have to create the areas that are safe, but drones also have significant positive applications. In agriculture, for example. In healthcare. The ability to drop medicines and so on to people in remote areas. If we had significant drones on the island, Mr. Speaker, we would have been able to deliver medicine, healthcare, etc. to people in Carriacou and Petit Martinique, notwithstanding the challenges to the physical infrastructure. So again, we are going to be developing a drone policy. We are working with all of the stakeholders on this, but we need to be able to equip members of the RGPF in ensuring that they can do so. I've chosen to speak, Mr. Speaker, on those areas of my portfolio because they link back directly to the supplementary budget. You would see, Mr. Speaker, that we had to buy as many as 16 vehicles to support the relief effort in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. We are going to have to spend money to rent barges and so on to take material up to Carriacou to facilitate the reconstruction and rebuilding efforts. So all of those things, Mr. Speaker, are happening as part and parcel of what we need to do to ensure that we can support the recovery and the relief effort. I will conclude on the housing issue, Mr. Speaker. We have to operate less in silos and bring all of the players together. And I know the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Carriacou and Petit Martinique Affairs, the Planning and Development Authority, we all have to work together to ensure that the incentives, the tax incentives, the business reactivation, all the assistance that the government is giving will be linked to ensuring that we build back better and that we build resilience back into the physical infrastructure in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. If we don't do that, then we'll be wasting taxpayers' resources. So the building codes must and have to be enforced. There's no question about that. We are working with our partner, SIDEMA. A consultant has been offered to us to assist us in helping to straighten that process, Mr. Speaker, and we would gladly accept the help that we've received. I want to conclude, Mr. Speaker, since I think we said it's going to be 1 hour, by thanking all of our partners who've come to the assistance of Greater Carriacou and Petit Martinique during this difficult time. I gave a list of persons who made financial contributions, but I think, Mr. Speaker, the international donor community, from the Samaritans for SIDEMA to the World Food Kitchen, we can go on and on, the Red Cross, YAC, you know, other colleagues have already spoken about the individual Grenadians who rose to the occasion and came out to defend Grenada, support our brothers and sisters in Carriacou and Petit Martinique. And so it is with a profound sense of humility, a profound sense of appreciation that we recognize that we are not alone and that we have brothers and sisters, friends, partners who are in solidarity with us and who have come to our aid from time to time. and permit me, therefore, to single out some of the regional institutions like CAFA, CDEMA, CARICOM, the RSS, and in particular, President Irfan Ali of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, and the government and people of Guyana, the Guyana Defense Force, for the tremendous solidarity and support that they've particularly shown to the people of Carriacou and PT Martinique, because they're still here. In fact, the Guyana Defense Force has agreed to extend their stay by an additional 2 weeks to support that initiative. On that score, Mr. Speaker, I have not left Grenada since Hurricane Beryl. I know they say I run the cabinet from a plane. I have not left Grenada safe to visit Carriacou and PT Martinique and our brothers and sisters in Union and Canouan and Mayo, and to show solidarity with Comrade Ralph Gonzalez and the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But I will be traveling tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, to Guyana for 1 day, partly to express personal appreciation and gratitude to the President, the government, and the people of Guyana for the tremendous support that they've given to us. And also, Mr. Speaker, we are leading a trade and investment mission, and we are hoping to establish direct flights between Guyana and Grenada so that we can help boost both the manufacturing and our tourism industry here. And I want to emphasize, Mr. Speaker, Guyana is the fastest growing economy in the hemisphere, perhaps in the world. And there are significant opportunities there, and we need to be forward-thinking, we need to be aggressive in terms of pursuing some of those opportunities. But you can't do that if you can't travel, or if the period of travel is long and lengthy. So we are optimistic that the air bridge will happen, and that the Guyanese who live in Grenada could get the opportunity to travel back and forth, and the Guyanese who want to come and visit paradise get the opportunity to come and do so. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank again the Minister of Finance. I want to thank you and the team at the Ministry of Finance for these.
Hi everyone, thanks for checking out the Bub Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.